Welcome back. We're looking at the environmental crisis in the Gulf of Mexico as the BP oil spill passes the 50-day mark. And joining me are Noah Hall, Executive Director of the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center, and Dr. Ricky Ott, a marine biologist and community activist. And our caller is, we have a caller on the line from the UK. Mahmood, what would you like to ask?
Well, I would like to ask, technology nowadays is so advanced. I can't understand that after so many days, BP is unable to seal the leak in the ocean of the floor.
Right. Actually, Dr. Ricky Ott, looking at how much time has gone by, I mean, I know that the implications of Exxon Valdez went on for years, but when you look at the actual cleanup and the process that's been taking place, you've seen what happens out there in the actual on-site. Why, with technology the way it is, isn't there a more effective way to deal with this, do you think?
In the United States, we use a process for listing products that can be used in an oil spill cleanup, and that process basically involves the federal agency rubber stamping what the industry wants. And so this is why we see the industry using boom, burning, and dispersants, things that were used 21 years ago in Exxon Valdez. They didn't work then, they're not working now. And it's the approval process, the listing process, that needs to be changed. And this actually adds up to your question about why is the U.S. obsessed with cheap oil? Are we going to stay the course, or are we going to actually alter our energy future? And in the U.S., we actually use a cost-benefit analysis to determine if the benefit from industry is worth the cost or the risks. And that equation only works when the costs are truly and honestly counted. And what we've done in this country is we've foisted a lot of the costs off onto the environment, like what we're seeing now, onto our communities, like in Alaska, we're still paying for this, and what we're seeing in the Gulf, onto the workers, and also onto public health. There are now, the occupational and environmental medicine doctors are aware that low levels of oil, such as are found in our urban air traffic, are actually causing asthma in children and adults. So until we honestly add in the costs, I'm concerned that we're still going to be thinking oil is so cheap. It's not.
Noah Hall, it's actually quite a complex web when it comes to the monies involved. We've got the lessees involved here. BP actually is just part of the equation. We have the government getting 19% royalties off the oil and gas that is generated too. There's a demand for income, of course, because the government's pretty strapped for cash. How is this going to play out when you look at really where the buck stops? There's the government, BP, and the lessees all involved here.
Yeah, there's a tangled web, like you said, of parties involved in this, and that's typical in complex oil drilling operations. You've got British Petroleum, you've got Transocean, who actually own the doomed rig, even companies like Halliburton that were involved in cementing the well, and as you pointed out, federal government, state governments involved. So far, BP has basically allowed itself to be the point company, to take responsibility and to basically say the buck stops with them. I don't know if that will continue down the road. I expect during the lawsuits that we're going to see over the next years and decades, BP is going to be looking to bring in other potentially responsible parties to share the liability burden and help write the checks to all the victims of this disaster.
We've got a call on the line from DC. Aaron's with us. Aaron, what would you like to ask? Go ahead, Aaron, in DC. I will try to get back to Aaron in a second then. Dr. Ott, let me ask you about the plan that President Obama has announced, that he's lifting the ban on short water drilling. I mean, considering what's happening, is that smart, in your opinion?
I don't believe it is. I know the president's under a lot of pressure to produce oil, but what we need to say, to push back and say that he's equally under pressure to protect the environment and to protect these coastal communities. And I really think we need a ban on oil drilling until we get some answers. Who is accountable and how are we going to fix this so it doesn't happen again? Shallow water, deep water, it doesn't matter. We've got regulatory agency capture going on here, and we need to ask some hard questions and find some answers.
Interesting, Dr. Ott. A viewer has just written in from Tanzania. Jeff Nasser, who's watching the show, says, do you feel the 72-hour deadline given to BP to announce its contingency plans is enough time?
BP should have had a contingency plan well before this. So yes, I think 72 hours is enough time. I think BP has plenty of plan A, B, C, and D, and they're pushing forward most aggressively with the plan that it wants right now, which is spraying dispersants everywhere.
All right, let's see if we can get back to Aaron in DC. Aaron? Aaron, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Riz.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question is, why has it taken so long for the federal government to act and leaving BP to act on itself. I think the federal government should come in with all the resources that they have to actually contain this problem. It's not a BP problem per se. It's a U.S. problem, and I think the federal government has failed to act first. Yeah.
Let me put this to Noah Hall, this issue of the federal government, and also with an email that ties into this as well, please. It's from Faisal Alam in Bangladesh, who wrote in saying, oil companies are so powerful that the public will always suffer at their expense. So long as big oil provides funding to the U.S. government, they will be able to pressure policy. Do you think that that kind of pressure has been responsible for the way the federal government's currently responded?
I think that's partly fair, but it's also oversimplifies the issue a little bit. Obviously, oil companies exert tremendous influence over the U.S. federal government. Major contributors of campaign cash, very influential in politics and in lobbying, but it's also more complex than that. Politicians rise and fall with the price of gas at the pump for the American public. And while big oil companies exert a lot of pressure over the federal government, at the same time, no president is going to remain in office or remain popular when prices at the pump go up. Americans really want it both ways. We want cheap gas, but we don't want the environmental impact of the oil drilling, the oil spills, and disasters like we're seeing in the Gulf. I don't know if we can have it both ways, and that's the tightrope, frankly, that President Obama and the federal government have been trying to walk and have been failing at.
Dr. Ricciard, of course, the people who feel this the most are those who live on the shoreline and see this firsthand and are affected. We've seen the impact it's had on the fishing industry, and you yourself know what it's like. An email has come in from a viewer by the name of Ali J in the UK, who wrote in saying, it's not the end of a way of life. When a disaster of this magnitude occurs, the relevant authorities should work side by side to resolve the issue instead of playing the blame game. But it must be pretty hard for those who find suddenly their businesses shut down and their livelihoods totally threatened or ending, to not want to blame someone.
Well, what the people in the Gulf are seeing is the oil coming ashore, working its way back into the bayous and marshes, and they don't know how long that's going to affect or what effect it will have on the ecosystem. It doesn't look good. There have been small spills over the past couple decades, and the people are aware that the oil industry has used dispersants in the marshes, and those are dead zones. There's no life. There's no shrimping. There's no oystering where dispersants have been sprayed. And now we see this starting to occur on a much larger scale. And the people, the first American people, the indigenous people, the little clusters of fishing community, they know that if they have to move, that their life is entwined with the land and their lifestyle. It's more than about money. People are saying, I don't want BP's money, I want my community. If they have to translocate, that it could potentially change their culture, so it could end their lifestyles.
Now, Hall, I've got about, well, just under a minute left, really. I just want to get your perspective on if you really believe there will be true accountability for all of this in the end.
That's a great question. I think that at one level, yes, there will be accountability. BP is going to be writing a lot of checks. I'd ballpark it easily over $20 billion over the next couple years. So to some extent, there will be accountability. BP will be paying. The other companies involved will be paying. The court systems will work. On the other hand, we won't see the true form of accountability in terms of giving people back what they had before the disaster. There are some things that money cannot replace, and those things are going to be lost forever, essentially a price we pay to have cheap oil in the United States.
Well, Noah Hall and Dr. Ricciard, I want to thank you both very much for joining us with this debate, and good to have your input.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. Remember, you can follow the program on Facebook, where you'll find recent shows and upcoming topics. You can also give us your feedback and share your thoughts with our global audience. You can give us feedback on the show and post your comments there too, so don't forget to do that. On the next show, a year after the disputed Iranian elections unleashed a wave of mass protests, what has happened to Iran's grassroots green movement? Has it become a unified opposition party, or have internal inconsistencies and external pressures diluted its momentum? Let us know what you think. Remember, you can always send in questions for that and join us for the live show too. From me and the team, until then, goodbye. We'll see you next time.